Good morning, this is Jacques speaking, and today's podcast topic is, will the COVID-19 pandemic foreshadow future effects of climate change? And using St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands as a case example. The lack of tourism on the island will cause major economic impacts, and the pandemic can serve as a foreshadow for future economic effects of climate change if no action is taken. This will be broken down into two main sectors of climate change: increased hurricane and inclement weather damage, as well as coral bleaching and destruction to coral reefs. Firstly, we can begin to speak about inclement weather and increasing hurricanes, which increase both in name and in number. The same effect is happening during the COVID pandemic, as the economy is entirely dependent on the tourism and amasses up to 40% of their GDP on tourism-based travel every year. But this is not going to get any better with the increase to hurricanes, which can be compared to the COVID-19 pandemic, as in both cases there is a lack of travel to the Virgin Islands. A 1.5 degree increase Celsius of ocean temperatures could prove to be devastating for the U.S. Virgin Islands. As seen already in the summer of 2020, the hurricane season had exhausted their regular list of names. To speak to this, I'll be talking to a small business owner that was forced to close down a branch of their store. This was compounded with the decreased income they had earned in 2017 due to the hurricanes Irma and Maria, but the COVID-19 pandemic was a tipping point. However, we can discuss how this will be affected in the future with future hurricanes and also future lack of tourism.
Now, speaking to Samir Mohanani, part of a small local family-owned jewelry business, we can begin to examine the impact on small businesses. During this pandemic, what have been the effects on your stores on the island?
During the pandemic, I would say the entire economy in the Virgin Islands has suffered tremendously, including small businesses. But people have been having to adapt and find how they can adjust their small businesses to this new world that we're living in.
Can you compare this to the effects if we were to suffer another Cat 5 hurricane? And what was the length of recovery after the Irma Maria hurricanes?
So the pandemic compared to a Category 5 hurricane, I would say is extremely different, yet very similar, because this pandemic, nobody knows when it will truly end and when the entire economy will go back to normal.
Are you worried about the viability of your business in the future if we were to suffer another climate-related event such as a hurricane?
I think, yes, there would definitely be a lot of uncertainty whether the business would continue going forward if another catastrophic event were to happen.
Now, moving on to the second section, coral reefs and coral bleaching. In 2016 alone, in the Great Barrier Reef, 1 in 3 corals died in the massive bleaching event they experienced there. The same can be seen for the Virgin Islands, where hurricanes and increasing ocean temperatures has caused mass coral bleaching, and many dive sites are no longer viable. According to the NOAA, by 2030, 90% of coral reefs will be in a threatened status. By 2050, all coral reefs will be threatened, and if left unchecked, combined local and global pressures will push these coral reefs out of existence. Rising ocean temperatures at this rate are inevitable, and we will continue to see deaths of coral reef, the most diverse biosphere on the planet.
So now, speaking to University of the Virgin Islands Professor of Marine Biology, Alan Eberhardt, we can get some more insight onto the effects of coral reefs in the Virgin Islands. Your understanding of coral reefs and local ecosystems in the Virgin Islands in the last couple decades has allowed you to see their evolution. How can you characterize the decline of coral reefs here in the Virgin Islands?
Coral reefs in the Virgin Islands have declined over the past 30 years, and particularly in the past 20 years. A lot of this has had to do with coral bleaching during periods of extreme high temperatures, and particularly in the summers in shallow bays.
Can you attribute these nefarious effects to the rising effects of climate change and global warming?
While this probably began as increased sea temperatures and the bleaching of corals, which made them more susceptible to disease, the diseases, most of which had not been apparent at all prior to rising sea temperatures. There are other contributing factors in the complete loss of coral reefs.
Do you think the tourism industry is having negative effects on local coral reefs?
The increase in tourism since the 1980s may have had an impact in some areas where tourism was more common, may have had an impact on corals.
And finally, do you think that the dying coral reefs will diminish tourism to the Virgin Islands?
The loss of fish species and invertebrate species will decrease the enjoyment of tourists and locals, but it could also create a situation where tourists seeking to scuba dive and snorkel will seek other destinations.
This shows how the negative effects of coral reefs will affect the tourism population, and in the future, with continued global warming and coral bleaching, there will be an impact to the tourism industry and impact on the Virgin Islands economy.